I'd like to call this meeting of the Monroe County Plan Commission to order. Today is Tuesday, October 19th, 2021. And Mr. Wilson, if you would please call the roll.
I'm going to get us started, Margaret. I think
Thank
Larry's
you.
going to join just a few minutes.
Thank you.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Here.
Dee Owens,
Here.
Julie Thomas,
That's you, Julie.
I'm here. Yep.
Amy Thompson,
Here.
Bernie Garitas,
I am here.
Jim Stainbrook,
Here.
Jerry Pittsford, Jeff McKim, Margaret Clements.
Here.
Okay, so we have 7 members and a quorum.
And would you please introduce the evidence?
Yes. I'd like to introduce the following items into the evidence: the Monroe County zoning ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan as adopted and amended, the Monroe County Subdivision Control Ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County Plan Commission Rules of Procedure as adopted and amended, and the cases that were legally advertised and scheduled for a hearing on tonight's agenda.
Is there a motion to approve the evidence?
I'll move
So-
we approve the evidence.
Second,
Okay.
Will you please call the roll?
Sure. Dee Owens,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
yes.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Brenda Garitas,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
A motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Dee Owens.
Yeah.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Okay, well, the first item on our agenda tonight is administrative business pertaining to a refund request. And this pertains to VAR-21-51 R&H Petroleum Changeable Copy Variance to Chapter 807. So Anne, if you would please discuss this case with us.
Good evening, everybody. Rebecca, do you happen to have those slides open?
I need the host to enable me to share screen.
Okay. Well, while that's happening, it's fairly simple. So this was a refund request for a variance petition. It was for a gas station currently owned by R&H Petroleum Inc. It was on behalf, they were being represented by C&B Sign Services. So this was, the gas station is located at 9817 West State Road 43. So they had filed to do a changeable copy sign. They actually have a current approved changeable permission to do a changeable copy sign, but they were hoping to do it on a pole sign. It was originally approved for changeable copy on the gas station canopy. Because of some legal matters within planning, planning is unable to take variances from the sign chapter 807 currently. So the petitioner's representative has gone ahead and requested to withdraw the variance request and also requested a refund for the amount. Does anybody have any questions?
Do any members of the Plan Commission have any questions for Ms. Crecelius? If not, is the petitioner here, and would the petitioner like to speak in favor of this petition?
Sorry, Madam President, instead of hitting the raise of the hand, I turned off my video, but I do have a question.
Yes.
I guess we've been presented a number of these refund requests recently, and this necessarily isn't for you, but more for planning. Is this something we typically do approve? I know that we should address these one at a time, but it would be nice to kind of get a sense of where planning is, of how we should treat these a little bit more fairly one from the other, I guess. Not saying we're not treating it fairly. This, I've just seen an influx of these refund requests recently, and I just want to make sure we're kind of handling it like we have in the past moving forward, or setting new standards of how, we should be handling these.
Okay, Commissioner Thomas, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. So to answer Mr. Enright Randolph's question, I think just because I've been on Plan Commission for a long time. So typically these refund requests come because of a number of reasons, but in this case, it's clear that our inability to actually have this case heard is a factor here to consider. I think one of the things we do when there's a refund request and we really don't understand why is to ask staff how much time they've spent on something. But in this case, I don't even want to ask that question because we can't even help them at this point. And maybe at some point they'll refile, but since we've told them we can't even consider it, I don't think it's fair to keep the dollars.
Right. I mean, honestly, to be honest, I pretty much grant most refund requests. I just want to kind of make sure I get a sense of where planning is. And thank you, Commissioner Thomas. I absolutely agree. If we can figure out how much time is spent, and this one is probably not worth the question. So thanks for addressing my question.
Mr. Steinbrook?
Margaret, if there isn't any other discussion, I would move that we grant the refund request for $408.50.
I second.
Okay, before we have a motion and a second, but I do want to, and I hope you do not object, to see if there's any member of the public who is opposed to this approval of this fee. And if so, please indicate by either raising your hand or pressing *9 if you're calling in on a telephone. If there's none, and the motion has been made and seconded, then Ms. Nestor, if you would please call the roll.
Sure. Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Bernie Garitaz,
Yes.
Jim Steinbrook,
Jackie, I'd like to say that Margaret, you really handle this well, and I was ahead of myself and ahead of others perhaps. So I apologize for the motion for which I vote yes.
Well, I appreciate it. I think you sent a signal, and it helps our meeting become more efficient. So thank you for making the motion. And if we could just continue with the roll.
yep, Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
John Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Julie Thomas.
Yes,
Okay, that passes 7-0, and I note the arrival of Larry Wilson as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, the first two items on the agenda have been continued in unfinished business, have been continued by the petitioner or the staff. And so we're moving on to item number 3, which is SSS-21-7, the Addison Sliding Scale Subdivision Preliminary Plat. Whoops, my screen just, I'm getting, my computer is changing. Okay, preliminary plat, partial plat vacation. This is the final hearing regarding 3 parcels on 29.99 plus or minus acres located in section 18 of Salt Creek Township at 3863 South Swartz Ridge Road. And this is zoned Forest Reserve Eco 3. And if Rebecca is here, would you please present the situation to us.
Yes. Hi, Myra. Thank you for the
Hi.
introduction. So this petition has been heard before previously, and it's back tonight primarily because we were given some more time to sort out the plat vacation piece of this petition request. So I'll just quickly move through the facts. So the petitioner is requesting a preliminary plat to subdivide one parcel into 3 lots. And a plat vacation is part of the request. The new lots created will contain, well, the first lot number 1, will contain 3.76 acres, of which 1.03 will be buildable. Lot 2 will have 6.12 acres, with 1.46 of those acres that are buildable. And lot 3 will have 12.36 acres with 3.03 acres of buildable area. Here we have a couple of maps. On the left is the slope map. So you can see there is quite a bit of slope on this parcel, but the division of the acres and creation of the new lots took that into consideration. So we were able to support their request in terms of the slope. And current zoning, I think as mentioned, is forest reserve. So here is a picture of the proposed preliminary plat. This petition was heard at the plat committee back in August, where they voted to send along a positive recommendation. And then it was heard in September at the Plan Commission. And like I said, at that meeting, the vote was to continue it to allow the petitioner's representative to provide us findings on the plat vacation, which is necessary at least for us to consider approving the plat vacation portion of the request. Previously, there were no findings submitted. So consequently, we were unable to recommend approval. Alternative to the findings, if all owners in the plat agree to the plat vacation, then that's another way that we can support the request for vacation. And in this case, after the September 21st meeting, the petitioner's representative, which is Eric Deckard, was able to get all parties to agree to the vacation. That led to us changing our recommendation for the plat vacation request. From the beginning, we had always made a recommendation to approve the sliding scale subdivision. And since the owners agreed to the plat vacation, we are now able to recommend or make a recommendation of approval for the plat vacation request as well. And that is really the gist of this petition. And so I will take any questions now.
Do any members of the Plan Commission have questions for Ms. Payne? I don't see any. So if the petitioner or the petitioner's representative is present, Commissioner Thomas, sorry, you have a question.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
I also had trouble with my raise hand button today. It's going around. So really kind of when I was rereading this packet, I just had kind of a silly question, and maybe it's not silly, but I just want to make sure that the information in terms of the buildable area is accurate for an eco zone.
Yes.
Is everything fit with the eco? Okay, perfect.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
does fit with the
Thanks.
eco. Yes.
Thank you.
Um,
That was it.
Okay. If there are no other questions from members of the Plan Commission, we'll go to the petitioner or the petitioner's representative, and you have a total of 15 minutes to speak about this case.
Great. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, Mr. Deckard. It's
All right,
good to hear
great.
you.
Thank you. So I agree with staff's recommendation. However, there is one small modification to the preliminary plat that everyone needs to be aware of. If I could kindly get Rebecca to go back to the diagram of the plat. If we can zoom in at the southwest corner of lot number 1, which lies next to Strain Ridge Road.
Lot number 1.
Yes, you've got your cursor right over that area.
Sorry, hold on.
It's okay. So the agreement was between Mr. Rinker and Mr. Deckard that Mr. Rinker would like to have a little bit of a buffer area here between himself and the lot number 1. Essentially, he didn't want a fence to be constructed along the property line between lot number 1 and the Rinker property. So in order to provide them with this buffer, we placed a small easement along and parallel to the south line of lot number 1 that went from Strain Ridge Road to the east to where it intersects the 15% slope line. So it's a tiny little easement. I've got a blown up diagram of that easement. And that was the agreement between the two parties. And I just wanted to make the Plan Commission aware that there is that small modification. And yes, you are showing the cursor in the right spot, Rebecca. Thank you. If Plan Commission has any questions, be glad to answer.
Mr. Enright Randolph?
So what we're looking at right now is past survey that you plan to have a revised, updated one?
Yes, this has been modified and was submitted through the portal, but this is a prior version that you're all looking at now.
Okay, so planning will have it within their records, and then the recorder will have it as well.
That is correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from members of the Plan Commission for Mr. Deckard?
I guess I just want to clarify my statement. If this goes through the whole process, the recorder will get a copy of it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, if there are no further questions for Mr. Deckard, and Mr. Deckard, is that the extent of your petitioner's statement to the Plan Commission this evening?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. And do any members of the public have, would you like to make a statement or speak in favor of this petition? If so, please raise your hand or press *9 on your telephone to indicate that you'd like to speak for 3 minutes. And I can't really see that, so tech
I don't
services.
see anyone.
Okay, and are there any members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? Please raise your hand or press *9 on the telephone to indicate a wish to speak in opposition to this petition.
I don't see anyone, Margaret.
Okay, I bring it back to the commission for further discussion and or a motion. So does any member of the Plan Commission wish to make a motion?
If you bring the case number back up, I exited out my PDF.
Yes, the case number is SSS-21-7, the Addison Sliding Scale Subdivision Preliminary Plat, Partial Plat Vacation. This is the final hearing.
With that case being mentioned, I will move that we make a positive recommendation, or wait, I guess I'm a little confused. I'm sorry, I should have my packet up. It's actual, I'd like to approve the plat vacation. That is a Plan Commission decision, right?
Yes, it's plat vacation and the subdivision.
So it'd be approving both the plat vacation and the preliminary or primary plat.
So it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Wilson, will you please call the roll?
I will. Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
Trina Ray Randolph,
You're on mute, John.
Yes.
okay, I did not see Bernie here and I missed the roll. Is he absent?
I'm here.
Okay, Bernie Veritas,
Yep. Yes, yes, sir.
Jeff McKim, Dee Owens,
yes,
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Jim Seabrook,
yes,
Julie Thomas,
yes,
Amy Thompson.
yes,
The plat vacation and the primary plat for the Addison Sliding Scale subdivision, SSS-21-7, is approved by an 8-0 vote.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deckard. We're
Thank
moving
you.
on to new business. And the first item under new business is REZ-21-5, Washington Township rezone from pre-existing business and agricultural rural reserve to IP is
Institutional public.
that's right. Thank you. Preliminary hearing. I'm feeling my age. A waiver of final hearing requested regarding 5.5 plus or minus acre parcel in section 16 of Washington Township at 478 East Chambers Pike. And so, Anne, we get to hear from you again. You look pretty tonight.
Thank you. Rebecca, are you still able to do my slides for me?
I can do it, Ann.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah, so the petitioner is the Washington Township trustee. The property is 5.5 acres. So this is a rezone request with the waiver of final hearing, which would be voted on tonight. This is the preliminary hearing. So the property is currently unplatted and it is mostly zoned pre-existing business and a little bit of ag RR. Let's see, so it's in Washington Township. This property was affected by, I-69 construction, so it's become smaller over the years. It was kind of a fill site for that construction, which you can see on the aerial imagery. You can see it on the slope map. So that fill area that you see that's been graded during the construction, that is pretty much the main buildable area of the property. Let's see, so Pictometer view, the petitioners are, working with a design professional. They're aware that, the site is somewhat limited by slopes and only has one, kind of smaller buildable area over the 5 acres. There is one karst feature present that they're aware and will plan on, buffering. Let's see. So this rezone petition, it's a precursor to Washington Township Trustee's Office wanting to build a rural fire station that would be on the pretty small side. So these are just a couple of site photos showing the main buildable area. So we've had a few comments by the highway engineer that have been updated. This site it's long and narrow because of the configuration. The petitioner is really aware of what they can and can't do. So there's pretty large setbacks from East Chambers Road and then also from the right of way of I-69. And right now their conceptual plan for the future commercial site plan is fitting within their boundaries. Let's see. So on the left side is kind of an overall view. The highway engineer did note that those property lines on the left are a little off, but they do have Bynum Faneuil working on the engineered site plan. So on the right is a close-up, but they have adapted the property boundaries to be correct and showing that they are working within their means, working within the means of the site. Kind of a working project. The highway project engineer, Ben Ayers, he's reviewed right-of-way activity permits for both driveways. One of them is going to be denied. So we do have kind of the understanding that most likely, their commercial site plan will change when it's actually filed, but Overall, most people have already had eyes on this. The MS4 coordinator, Kelsey Thetonia, she's looked at the site. She has no comments for the rezone and recognizes that she'll be working on this when that site plan comes through. So staff is recommending a positive recommendation to the county commissioners based on the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway Department and MS4 coordinator reports. Does anybody have any questions?
Members of the Plan Commission, if you have questions for Ms. Crecelius, please raise your hand. And please note also that Mr. Pittsford has arrived and he's calling in from a cell phone. So Ms. Owens and then Mr. Pittsford.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to ask, I thought I heard you say that the station is going to be fairly small. I'm absolutely for a fire station at this location. How many bays or what do you mean by small? I'm interested in the size of it and how many vehicles it can hold.
I think it's 2 or 3 bays. So the dimensions of the building are, let's see, it's 45 by 80, so about 3,600 square feet. And from the conceptual site plan, I see about 6 parking spaces, 1 handicapped.
Okay, very good. And can you tell me, as I looked at the pictures, I could see that there's a bridge over the highway to the north. What about to the south? How is the ingress and egress to the south as far as fire department coverage goes? How do they get over I-69, I guess? They have to go north? Is that the only way they can go?
They would either go north or they would have to take East Chambers Pike and do a bit of a zigzag down to the Sample Road exit.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, that can be difficult for fire vehicles. They have to have plenty of turning space and all that. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Owens. Mr. Pittsford?
Dee, thank you. You asked one of my questions, so that saves me. Is staff recommending waiver of final hearing as well? Is this something that needs expedited response, or is this something that doesn't have to have a waiver?
I haven't encountered any issue with, needing a second hearing. So far, things are pretty clear cut, and most people, most Monroe County staff don't have any overall concerns that might require, more research on this part.
Is that all, Mr. Pittsford? Yes. Okay, any other questions from members of the Plan Commission? If there are none, is the petitioner here, and would the petitioner like to make the case to the Plan Commission for this project?
Yes, I am here. Barb Uli, Washington Township trustee. And just to clarify 2 points, it is our understanding when the Sample Road is completed to Bottom Road, that will take care of one of the issues with fire trucks. And then also the reasoning behind the size of our station is currently 89% of our fire runs are EMS related. And so we're preparing a station that is more EMS oriented. However, it will have fire fighting capability to also speak to the ISO rating for the township. So we're trying to cover both, but we're leaning more towards EMS. And yes, I am making the petition to rezone this parcel so that we can get a station in Washington Township.
Thank you, Ms. Uli. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? If so, please raise your hand or press *9 in order to be recognized. So Jackie, if there's anyone, just let me know.
I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay, is there any member of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please raise your hand or press *9.
I don't see anyone, Margaret.
Okay, well, then we bring it back to the Plan Commission for further discussion and or a motion. Ms. Owens?
Yeah, hearing nothing, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion regarding Res 21-5, the Washington Township rezone to IP and waiver of final hearing requested. I'd like to make that a positive motion.
I second.
Could you please call the
I
roll?
will call the roll. The motion is to approve the rezone from PB to A and AGR to institutional public for the parcel located at 478 East Chambers Pike. In addition to waive the final hearing. Again, the motion is to approve the rezone to institutional public. A vote in favor is a vote to approve the rezone and waive the final hearing. Tryon Wright Randolph,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Jim Steenbrook,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Barbara Clemens.
Yes.
Motion to send a favorable recommendation to the commissioners has been approved by an 8-0 vote.
Well, that's wonderful. And Trustee Uli, thank you for all of your hard work on this. This is an important addition to our community, and we're looking forward to helping our community be more safe and healthy, and you made a way for that to happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item, we have ZOA-21-8, and this is the amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, Chapter 815 site plans regarding especially certified site plans. Mr. Wilson, will you please share with us what the major changes and considerations for our deliberation?
Sure, I can assist with this one as well, Margaret.
Oh, great, thank you.
Can you confirm you can see 815-2 on the screen? Okay, good.
Yes.
Sorry, working with one screen today. So the changes from, well, I'll go ahead and present this since this is the first hearing of this. So what we're proposing is for the site plan review requirement to be a bit more streamlined, to differentiate between when a commercial site plan is required, when a certified plot plan is required, and when it's just a scaled drawing. So we have broken it out into 3 categories. Commercial is including multifamily and all non-residential structures. Residential is considering just new residential principal use structures. So consider a vacant lot that is going to be developed with either a single or 2 family residential principal use. And then an accessory category, which would be all of the residential structures. And for now, we're including this into additions to single family and 2 family residential, detached accessory structures, agricultural structures. So those are kind of the 3 categories that we have put together to differentiate the different types of permits that we receive in our office. So as you go down in the 815 chapter and look at the highlighted review, or edits, I should say, in blue, we've added a table, and then corresponding to this table, those little icons showing you which requirement is required for which type of structure. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the accessory structures would be a site plan to scale. Commercial structures have always been and will continue to be certified site plans. And then the residential new construction structures will be certified plot plans. And then as you go further into the ordinance, you find the different types of requirements that are for each different type of request for a permit. So for instance, name and address of owner, developer, engineer, surveyor, and architect. So that would be required for all of the permits as applicable. As you can tell, for a lot of these, not too much has changed. The black text is existing. They may have been reordered, but the black text is already what is in chapter 815. So we did make some clarifying requirements, some things that we've been noticing on some of our site plans. And as you go down, some of the more important things that we've added, parking plan, making sure that we have finished floor elevations. Some of these are stormwater requests, and also things that we've noticed that would be helpful at the building stage to make sure that it's included. Erosion control methods, we've been asking people, and they have been compliant with adding things like silt fence, tree protection areas, things like that. But we think it would be helpful to actually have it in the ordinance instead of it just being a voluntary action. And then I wanted to also note in the packet, you'll see that our zoning inspector who reviews our building permit applications for planning conformance with the ordinance, she did point out that there were several statistics from new single family residences applied for between February 24th and September 16th. The reason we start with February 24th is the date that we went live on our new permitting software. So it's a little bit easier to track, but I think this gives us a good lay of the groundwork for what's been happening this year. So according to her research, of those 95 new single family residences that were applied for, 51 or 54% already included a certified site plan in their original application. 7 or 14% of those applicants were asked for additional information after they submitted a certified site plan. 44 or 46% of the applications did not include a certified site plan. 29 or 66% were then asked for more information. And then eventually 6 or 21% were then asked to submit a certified site plan after original submission. So 58 or 61% of applications ended up with certified site plans overall. And so the point of this is just to let you know that if we do implement a requirement for certified plot plans, we're not talking to go from 0 to 100. We're looking at that 39% of people that are currently not submitting a certified plot plan to make that a requirement. And then just a note as well, we think that it would help with the overall review time by staff, and hopefully down the line, the purpose of this requirement is to hopefully prevent issues of drainage, building and karst features over lot lines and easements. All of those things can be fairly expensive later down the road. And so we hope this is a better protection for potential home buyers, and also just for staff review to be able to state that it's able to be in conformance with the ordinance. And one day, if we are able to go out and certify and get as-built of where things are built, to follow and close that loop of, they said it was going to go in this place, it went in this place, and they're showing us an as-built or what have you, that it ended up in that place. So that's kind of this ordinance that we're presenting tonight, and this is the first hearing of it, so wanted to get any feedback or questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. I see that Ms. Owens has her hand raised, and then Mr. Steinbrook.
Thank you. What's the difference between a site plan and a plot plan?
Yeah, so Dee, the terminology between those two in surveyor's language, I would say a plot plan is kind of a lower bar, and we've kind of tried to implement that in the 815 standards to show that not all of the requirements for commercial sites are required for residential sites. So you'll see, as I scroll up, kind of more requirements in the commercial category than for the residential. So a plot plan.
The difference. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a little bit less requirements, but it's still certified. It's just not held as to the same, meeting all of the ordinance requirements, just what's minimally needed for residential
Okay.
builds.
When I read this, I wasn't quite clear. Now I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stainbrook?
Margaret, I see that Jeff's here now, so he probably has an important question, but mine's a reminder that I can't see all of the text, Jackie, on the next screens when we work with them. That's helping, Jack. Well, it did help. Pardon me, Margaret, that was the thing.
Sure.
I can't see it, Jackie. I can't.
Jim, you can drag the images over to the left side of the screen. Just
Well, thank you. I tried. Oh, now, but okay.
and then you'll be able to see the text. You just move the gallery of speakers.
Well, whoever's being so helpful, yeah, I see. Yeah, if I move the gallery of speakers off, then I can see. Thanks.
Got it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
problem.
you. Mr. McKim?
Thank you very much, and I apologize for being late, but we just passed a county budget for 2022. So my question and this one is just that, does the community have the capacity to deliver these certified site plans in a timely manner? I mean, I just, I know this isn't the same thing, but I had to call around about possibly getting a septic field repair in August. And everyone I talked to told me they weren't even able to do anything until 2022 at the earliest. And I'm just wondering if that's going to be the same situation here, if we really do have the capacity to be adding any kind of additional restrictions like this.
Yeah, so that's a good question, Jeff. One of the things that staff did as well was reach out to 3 different main engineering firms in the county. There are more than that, but we did that in order to get an idea of cost as well as timeline. And as far as timeline, they all were able to say anywhere between, it was kind of a wide gap, 2 and 6 weeks. But I think your comment about the health department's septic permit, that would be separate from, a certification of a plot plan or site plan. Or
I know, that was just an example, but yeah, okay. No, I'm glad that you reached out and got that information. Thank you.
Yeah, could be up to 6 weeks during their busy time. So it is something we're considering, but once people are able to get the message that we're requiring this, we're hoping that sets in motion a little bit earlier planning on the part of the applicant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Enright Randolph?
Just kind of in the same line of questioning there. I think that was a fair example that Mr. McCann made. Yes, it might be a little different than a certified site plan, but the fact is the profession is being inundated with work. So for them even to find time to come and do that project, it is tough for the profession right now. I will go ahead and state that even internally, I'm having to space out my services for professional help 2 to 3 months out. So, that's significant. Also, I don't think we'll ever necessarily to be in a position to predict what the profession can and can't offer. I know, Jackie, you're doing your due diligence, and I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you reaching out, but I want to make sure that we're not, saying anything that that you are going to be able to have this work performed in that timeline. We have no ability to control the profession or the timeline or the prices being set for the work being conducted. And that just needs to be very clear and articulated every time this discussion is being had. So I'm glad this isn't the final reading, because I think Mr. McKim's point is very significant. What can the profession handle right now? I just pulled up a resource document that we created at the surveyor's office because we get a lot of calls for private surveying work. So we have a local surveying company PDF document for a resource to the public. And most of these are your local surveyors, but anyone's can be added to the list. And we've had continued to grow the list. But just looking at it right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, nine surveying companies on our list. So, I mean, yes, there's more than a few larger major ones, but even some of the smaller ones still can't perform work for 3 to 4 months. So that's a big hurdle to put on our property owners here at the county to move forward with potential developments. So I just wanted to really add to that discussion because I think that's one of the most critical parts of that we get that part right.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Mr. Pittsford and then Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, President Clemens. My question is pretty straightforward, I think. Is this something that the engineering or architectural firms would be doing somewhere farther down the road anyway, or is this additional work? And are we confident that it advances the county's objective in some way in terms of knowing what's going to be there when everything's done? I know Jackie referenced as-built designs. So is this meant to curtail the as-builts that come out after the fact?
So I'll take your question, Jerry, as one of them being, is this something that would be required down the line anyways? Not always. So right now, I think if we were to break down the email from Rachel Henry, the zoning inspector, to say which sites are more likely to have certified site plans or certified plot plans, I would say it's primarily in the certified platted subdivisions. So I think that we already are seeing those plot plans in those areas because the lines are already drawn. And I think it's cheaper, from what I've understood from surveyors, typically to do a plot plan in a certified subdivision. It makes sense. They already know where the lines are. But, you know, is this going to be required down the line? I think that's something that we're considering. Do we need to be more clear from the planning perspective? We've been doing, you know, land use certificates and going into commercial sites and any multi-unit sites and getting those, making sure that those are built as planned. But residential sites, we get a lot of them. And, you know, they're not always built to the site plans that we get, certified or not. So I think it's something to consider that down the line where this is maybe a first step. And is it furthering the public benefit? We think that, you know, we get some site plans that are a lot to be desired, not to scale, pictures of drawings from a small scale. And we can't really tell where the lot lines are, things like that. So one of the surveyors that we talked to actually said they've been advocating for this for a long time. And the prior MS4 was also an advocate for this because they see a more costly expense to home buyers later down the line when they realize that their house is built in a low spot or in the wrong location across a lot line. So, you know, I can't give you an exact number of how many that has happened to, because frankly, we probably don't know about all of them, but I think, you know, we're going to be preventing that from happening in the future if we do require certification.
Well, I mean, truthfully, if you prevent one person from getting rubbed the wrong way by a site plan drawn on a napkin, you know, over lunch, then obviously that's a good thing. My concern is always, are we adding a layer of bureaucracy just for the sake of adding a layer of bureaucracy? But if there is ultimately an end gain, either for the public benefit or for the benefit of the architectural or engineering firm being able to say, look, you really can't do that, you know, and when you do the more detailed drawing, you're able to legally assert, or by ordinance, however you want to phrase that, assert a little more control over your client and saying, I can't turn this in. So if that gives them a little more leverage to submit a more complete plan, a more fair plan for the public benefit, then I would be in favor of that. So I'd really like to hear from more of the engineering and architectural firms. I know you did a first blush kind of straw poll, it sounds like, but I would like a little more concrete feedback if that's possible without it being burdensome. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas and then Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, I appreciate the discussion we're having, especially regarding the few number of firms that we have in the community, and also getting feedback. But, you know, this is really an effort not only to protect the new homeowner or the home builder, but this is an effort to protect people who are already living there in the neighborhood. And we've seen too many instances where there have been issues with lot lines or runoff, drainage problems. And, you know, if there's a shortage of professionals, we'll have to find a way around that. It may mean having to go out of town to hire somebody. I don't know what that answer is. And it's not ideal, obviously, but I don't think we should bend the system. I think we need to support the system and make sure that we're doing what's right for our residents who currently live here and those who are building here. There's no reason to wait. I don't know what, with all due respect, Jerry, I don't know what you're going to hear from architects that it's going to, or engineers, that's going to change any minds at this point, because they've already gone out. The staff has already gone out, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and asked for that first round of information. But this is really a way to protect Monroe County residents. And so I don't see a reason to hem and haw over this. But if folks want to wait, fine, that's fine. I think this is really well done, and I applaud the staff for taking this measure on. And I think Jackie's note is very important in that this is not every one of the 95 or so who have applied to build a single family residential structure. This is about 30 out of the 90 or so who would then be asked to take this extra step. So I don't think it's particularly onerous at that point either. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
You're on mute, Larry.
Got it. I just wanted to add that this really adds value for the homeowner. We've had situations for both homeowners and neighbors where somebody's built in a drainage way, or we've had cases where they built over a septic tank. I mean, and these are the kind of things that are very expensive to remedy. And it's really unfair for a neighbor that somebody who drew a site plan on a napkin build a home in a drainage swale that's impacting the rest of the neighborhood. And I also think that having a certified site plan will make it easier to get financing. It'll be easier to do remodeling. It's a asset that kind of runs with the home. That, you know, eventually I think the homeowner will recoup the cost in savings and in the quality of the product. And for us, we do not have the ability to really go out and do the site plan for them, which is kind of what you're asking us to do if we get a scrawled site plan on a napkin. We can't verify the setbacks, we can't verify the dimensions of the house, we don't know exactly where things are on the site. So it's a great value both for us and I think for the homeowner and for the county to have these in place.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Enright Randolph?
Yes, hi. I just wanted to make one other comment quickly, pretty much in line with my comment at the administrative meeting. My first task whenever I'm reviewing these packets is to try to find out where my concerns lie. And I like to then bring those forward for discussion purposes, or at least state them so they go on record. Then I always forget that there's a lot of good baked into this as well. And just like I did at the admin meeting, yes, I do think we need to start thinking about certified site plans. We could even potentially start thinking about digital submittals. But ultimately, the system we have in place right now, a lot of things do fall through the gaps, and that creates even a larger onerous burden to our property owners. But we need to mitigate as much as possible by putting any more bureaucracy on top of this if we can. And that's where my biggest concern is. I do think we need to kind of address this, make sure that people aren't encroaching on other people, people aren't building in environmentally concerned areas, and that we kind of understand how things are actually going to shape up on the ground. So I do support staff on their intent here, and I do think they got it pretty ironed out. And if we take final action today, or if we bring it back next time, I'll leave that to my colleagues to move forward. But we definitely need to monitor this and make sure that we're not creating any undue burden, especially in line with actually getting the service done. Yes, there's probably a slew of professionals across the state of Indiana, but still, I think they're encountering some of the same issues we're encountering here in Monroe County. So there is a lot of promising things in this that could prevent a lot of issues that become onerous burdens. And I think that by the end of the day, I will support something, but I think we need to keep a close eye on this. So if we need to change it, we can, correct it as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garitas?
Oh, hey, Jackie, can you show me the section? First off, staff's done a nice job communicating this, and the reaching out to the local professionals, in particular the land surveyors and the engineers. Architects probably don't have as much play in this as the other two valuable professions, but nonetheless, where are the as-built requirements listed at?
So Bernie, that's something that would be discussed as a potential follow-up to in the new ordinance. Yeah.
Okay.
Not proposed on this one.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I thought maybe I missed it. I've just got a couple, because I'm still going through this. I've got just a couple questions. So under the accessory definition, all other residential structures, parens, it includes additions to all new single family and 2-family residential detached accessory structures. So is that just saying that all other residential structures and additions to existing structures? Is that what I'm reading?
So yes, one of the things that we wanted to differentiate was between like a vacant lot that's going to get a new home on it versus I've had a home here for 50 years and now I'm going to add on.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to require yet the certified plot plan for the add-ons unless we need that discretion, which we've built into the accessory one under A.
Okay, and then, okay, so that takes care of the as-built. That's all I've got. I think that, I mean, this is going in a very good direction, and I'm less concerned about the public or the professionals in the community being able to handle the workload. That's what weekends are for. Okay, so they can make that up there and be compensated for it. The timeline though is important when you look at, the decision making, putting the plan together, and then if there are things like topographic surveys, for instance, for residential home sites where they have to have 1-foot contours, things like that, items like that seem burdensome when the administrator can always say that there's not enough information that they can grasp what's going on. So I'll leave my comments to that. I overall, I think it's a reasonable direction. I think that there are some specifics that are very cumbersome from a cost standpoint, from a necessity standpoint. And if I show a site plan where I show a 10-foot concrete drive and on my 5-acre parcel and it's a 12-foot concrete drive, does that really matter as long as my access with the highway department is fine, for instance? So that's all I've got. And it looks like Mr. Deckard hung on here. So somebody's comment about listening to some of the professionals in the community, then maybe he'll have some comments. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Garatas. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that we're not asking for a waiver of hearing on either of the two text amendments that are reported tonight. So we want to give people 2 meetings so that there will be time if somebody raises concerns later.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Is there any member of the public who would like to weigh in on this?
Good afternoon. This is Eric Deckard again. Can
Thank
everybody
you.
hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was just reading through the packet this afternoon, and they were just a couple of items that that drawed my attention to it. So if we can go to, it would be 815.3 B and C. I can see in these 2 sentences that we have omitted the word surveyor. So we have engineer or architect in B and in C. This could prevent a land surveyor from being able to perform his or her duties as a professional in their capacity in which we're licensed to perform. And I think that maybe if we can just, interject into these sentences here, surveyor. On item number C, maybe we can restructure that just a bit to where it would say surveyor, engineer, or architect licensed by the state of Indiana, certifying that the placement of the proposed structure meets all the design standards. I don't know that in a plot plan that we're necessarily certifying to the structure itself so much as it is the placement of the structure on the ground. And, you guys have all been concerned about the capacity in which the locals are taxed right now as far as being able to get these certified plot plans out in a timely fashion. And I concur with what the consensus has been. It's talking with some of the fellow surveyors in the community. We're all 2-6 weeks out. If you're doing a boundary survey, you could be as far out as 8 weeks at the current time, and it's kind of same across the board throughout the state right now. If there's any questions that the Plan Commission may have, I'd be glad to try to answer any questions. If you have some concerns or anything like that I might be able to help answer.
Well, this would be a departure from our normal procedures, but I would like to ask any members of the Plan Commission if they have any questions for Mr. Deckard. If so, raise your hand. I don't know if I see everything. Mr. Enright Randolph, and then Mr. Stainbrook, and then Mr. Garatas.
Hey, Eric, do you think this would be maybe a very potential light discussion at your next Hoosier Hills chapter of, what their thoughts would be? Would that be something that you think would be appropriate to discuss? The Hoosier Hills chapter, by the way, is kind of a subcommittee from the ISPLS, which is the Indiana Society of Professional Land Surveyors. And they are just now doing a chapter meeting this month. And Eric is the local chair of the Hoosier Hills. So I was curious if it might be appropriate to kind of have that discussion and then provide some feedback. I also sit on the Hoosier Hills chapter.
Yeah, I think that would be an appropriate conversation, Tron. That meeting will be held next Wednesday at 6 o'clock at my office if you're interested.
Thank you. Thank you. That would be a service to the county. Thank you, Mr. Deckard. Mr. Stainbrook?
Well, if it's in the best interest of the county and its citizenry, I don't understand why we can't go outside of the county. Maybe that isn't what is being said, but if someone needs a professional, I think individually, if we have to, we go outside of the county. So that's the question, Margaret.
I'm
Yeah.
sure
Could I
there,
provide a little clarification? I think, Jim, what we're discussing is the fact that it may take a while if you're local or outside of the county to even get a professional to come and provide that service for a certified site plan. Not just local here to Monroe County, just across the state. And that's why I was curious if that would be an appropriate conversation to take, because we'll be working with more surveyors than just local ones.
Well, Tron, that's good, and thank you for adding that for not only my benefit but that of everyone. But actually, I was following up on what I thought was a point in Julie's commentary or comments that if the people aren't available, or if they're overworked now within the county, allowing again, Tron, for what you're saying, I wouldn't imagine that the professionals in every part of the state were equally busy. Now, I'm not suggesting that we go way up north or whatever, and I'm not suggesting we go anyplace, but I'm just saying I don't know why we would limit ourselves to Monroe County. I think the professionals here should be considered along with all the citizenry. But if that's becoming a problem for the professionals, and therefore a problem for the county, and therefore for the citizens of the county, okay. So I think I've overtalked my point to a place where maybe I've lost the point. So anyway, it's just a consideration and a question. Thanks, Margaret.
thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Commissioner Thomas?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a long-term issue or a short-term issue, and I don't think it's wise to make a decision based on a short-term labor issue either, because the goal is loftier than that issue itself. Clearly, we have to be cognizant of the wait times. And if we can do anything to incorporate that here, or find a way to put the wait time on specifically on staff in terms of once the information is provided, staff has X number of days to respond or to complete the process, that might be a better way to go. And then we don't have to keep revisiting this. So just some thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Enright Randolph?
Just wanted to make the same point that Julie did, that, you know, we need to factor this into our decision making as far as, you know, how much time it may take to kind of retain that type of professional services. Also, I think we should somewhat try to understand what kind of financial burden this is going to put on our property owners as well. And again, I think the way that the staff is going is great. I think this is just something that needs to get right, or we just need to amend it as soon as we see some practical difficulties that we weren't, you know, clearly addressing. So that's kind of my rationale of this discussion, and why I think it's very important for us to have.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
I just wanted to comment that one of the things we can do once this passes is attempt to do an outreach to the builders in the county and suppliers and so on to get the word out. This is now a requirement. And so that gets built into the timeline. And from my experience, people are having a rather long timeline anyway because of how busy the builders are, delays in supplies and materials, delays in getting a septic permit. So I think we can build that in, you know, as long as we alert them that this is going to be a requirement, then they will not be delayed in their project. They'll be just built in, oh, before we get started, we need to get a certified site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Bell, Mr. Jason Bell.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jason Bell. I'm the executive director for the Builders Association here in Monroe County. So some of the things that you guys are talking about, we presented to some of the builders, we presented to some of the members that we have, and they've kind of brought up some of the same concerns. They brought up, you know, what the time frame is going to be and the delays of waiting for that site plan, the cost to the homeowner. We've submitted a letter to the planning department from one of our builders, kind of laying out quite a bit. So hopefully that'll be brought up. But I definitely recommend that you guys have a conversation with our members. We have a lot of builders, a lot of associates. Larry, we're planning on having a monthly meeting with Larry, and I hope we can discuss this before anything gets pushed through. So it's an invitation to all of you. If you want to sit down and meet with us, that would be fantastic. I will tell you that probably half of our members are for it and half are probably against it. But it's also kind of the language. I think we're all kind of for something like this because I think it is a positive thing for the community. But I think there's some things that we need to talk about and figure out, I apologize, I forget the one guy's name, but some of the language, like on the accessory and stuff like that, just need to be fine-tuned and make sure, obviously, that the time frame and cost isn't a major factor for a homeowner.
Thank you, Mr. Bell, and thank you for participating tonight. Are there, Mr. Garitas?
Yeah, I've just got maybe a quick comment to Jason Bell. You know, one thing with your the Builders Association meetings, and just so you know, I'm a licensed land surveyor and civil engineer, so I kind of got a little bit of understanding of what the builders are up against. But you know, that being able to go through and for staff to be able to utilize a scaled drawing that takes into account public right-of-way, accurate property lines, setbacks, easements and things that could affect a building location on a small platted lot, say anywhere from 1/4 of an acre to 1/3 of an acre or less. You know, that kind of effort and education maybe goes a long way to the builders, and most of your builders know that. And that's been a learning curve that a lot of people in the community have been working through for a lot of years. So in that regard, I think that what staff's doing here can be a real positive, and I think that what the Builders Association can do would be a positive also. Just kind of just a slight point maybe to bring some of the minds together that are trying to solve an issue. That'll also help with the timeline on building permit review, because the information will be out there for staff for them to be able to make discernible decisions that can make sense without a lot of back and forth and conversation. Secondly, I think that, and this is probably tiptoeing around the hula hoop here, but you know, when we develop these site plans and plot plans and you know, Dee, that was a great question that you asked at the beginning of this. I compliment you on that, because there is a difference. The one thing that we have to realize, and this isn't because I'm plugging for land surveyors, but accurate locations of buildings to property lines, easements, dimensions relative to where meets and bounds description falls, or, I mean, it requires a land surveyor to know that every time. An architect doesn't necessarily have the tools, nor does an engineer have the tools to be able to determine the placement on the ground, nor on a map of where these two things come together, which is really what's important. We can show things on a drawing 33 feet off the property line, but if there's not a big enough lot there to be able to fit it in there, you need somebody that can measure it accurately on the ground too. So just a few observations. I'm not suggesting that is a reason to change it, but that might be something Eric could discuss at the next Hoosier Hills meeting and get the input from the professional community. So thanks for indulging me. Building Association has always done a great job, and they have an association to educate their membership, and I compliment you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Garitas. Ms. Nestor Jelen?
Thanks, Margaret. I just wanted to have Kelsey Thatonia speak to some of the stormwater benefits of having certified plot plan as well for residential.
Hi, yeah, sure, this is Kelsey. So I know that this was first brought up with Terry, and I am absolutely in full agreement that this will absolutely help for so many homes that will be built, whether it's a very small lot or very large lots. They all have different issues and different things that we need to look at. So it's hard because I receive a lot of drainage complaints, and they're not all for old homes built before we had good regulations in place. And I think it's our responsibility to, get the information we need in order to keep our residents safe and to protect our natural resources and drainage ways. So, this will tie in nicely with our new stormwater management ordinance. I'm going to have some guidance in the technical standards manual requiring the land around new homes to be graded in a certain way, and gets into a bit more detail than we have in the past. So the main point is that we're not going to be allowing homes to be built that are going to flood or cause flooding. And so I think if someone's going to be building a home, I want to make sure that we, again, have the information we need to review them responsibly. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thetonia. Mr. Stainbrook?
Well, following up Kelsey's comment, of course, in a more general way, I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Wilson's input through the person, particularly of Jackie. And just as a caveat, this may not be something new. I believe Julie and maybe some others have mentioned I don't want to say due speed, that might suggest something else, but due caution, to be careful with this. I've seen things drawn out that looked like a kindergartner drew it, and it went through in a different process, but it was approved. And I think it's been one of the biggest travesties that I could ever observe having happened in any governmental entity. So I just say, let's be careful. I think we're in good hands. As I say, I commend Mr. Wilson, his leadership, and Jackie's hard work. But thank you, Margaret.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak? If there are none, we'll just, this is just the first hearing on this, and we will be hearing it at our next month's, is that right, Jackie? Meeting of the Plan Commission?
Yes.
Yes, at our regular meeting. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is another amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, Chapter 815, site plans regarding phasing. And this is item number ZOA-21-10. And I don't know if Mr. Wilson or Ms. Nestor or Jelen will be covering this.
I'll go ahead and introduce it, Margaret, and then Larry and I can kind of tag team. So just a little bit of context, this is also an amendment to Chapter 815. The reason we have these separated out is just so that the public can see that they're both additions and text amendments that are dissimilar from each other. So one has to deal with certified site plans and certified plot plans. And this is really getting into a subsection of a certified commercial site plan. So this is discussing the introduction of phasing. Phasing is currently permitted in under plan unit developments and subdivisions, but it's not currently permitted under site plans. So the purpose of phasing is simply to split up a commercial project into smaller chunks that can individually meet the ordinance standards, but it ultimately results in smaller development sections and hopefully better compliance as you go about the project. So we're having this include not only a phasing plan, which shows the different phasing sections for staff review, but also a narrative. And one of the benefits of having both an illustrative map and a narrative is so that we can discuss a construction schedule within each phase. And also, you know, things like bioretention or other stormwater management features may be located in the first phase and graded in as temporary sediment basins or other beginning stages of construction. And then in the final phase, we can have it in a narrative and illustrated that we have to come back to it for final approval. Some of these things get to be to the end, and then we need to go back and see like what is the exact timeline for this to get approved. So this provides a lot of clarity to both staff and the developer of what we're expecting when before we'll issue occupancy for structures. So Larry, did you have something you wanted to add on to this?
Well, I just want to say that again, we've had this before PUDs and with subdivisions where we allow phasing. We've really not had too many projects on single lots where a subdivision was not required or a PUD site plan was not required, which is phasing. So we're adding this to cover that new situation where people are buying large tracts of land and not subdividing or needing to use a PUD. The other thing I was going to add, we have run into problems in regard to issuing a land use certificate at the end of a project because things aren't done. And this will allow us to basically have these in segments and say, okay, there's a bright line, everything has to be done within this phase before we issue a land use certificate. And hopefully that will reduce fights, hopefully that will reduce litigation in regard to people who go ahead and move occupants in before they have an LUC. And finally, the one thing I will note is we're designing this so that each of these phases will be standalone. So in some event, the developer fails, goes under, why does still be standalone and some unfinished infrastructure that was moved to a different phase? So I think all those are good reasons for having this, and we'll end up with a more affordable process for the developer, but actually a better process for the public, in that we will assure that everything that's required to be done is done.
Okay, are there any questions from the Plan Commission for Mr. Wilson or Ms. Nestor on this item? So I'm not seeing any. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak with relation to this suggested change? Seeing none, I bring it back to the Plan Commission, and this is just the preliminary hearing. So we will hear this again a month, roughly a month from now. I see Mr. McKim raised his hand. So Mr. McKim.
Just that I would actually like to hear from the development community on some feedback on this and what impact it might have. Some of the comments we just received on the previous amendment proposal were quite useful, and it would be really nice if we could receive similar feedback on this one.
Well, if Mr. Bell and Mr. Deckard are still here, please note the request that we'd like to hear from your communities as well on this item, and please vet it with your communities so we can understand better the ramifications of this change from your perspective. So if that, I think that we have finished discussion of this item and we are moving on to reports. Mr. Wilson, do you have any reports to give the Plan Commission?
To quote David Schilling, Esquire, I do not.
And Mr. Schilling, do you have any items to share with us from legal?
To quote Larry, quoting me, I do not.
Well, I'd like to just, I am the Plan Commission's envoy to the MPO, the Transportation Coordinating Committee. So I'd like to begin a little bit of a tradition of reports from people who are Plan Commission delegates to other committees. And I want to just raise with the Plan Commission kind of an overriding concern that that I have about lack of coordination between the city and the county with regard to coordinating and updating a cohesive transportation plan, given all the development that's going on. And I think that we need to have an updated area-wide combined traffic study, and that the MPO chair should have a centralized government body to deconflict area-wide traffic and safety infrastructure requirements. Right now, especially with the hospital project going on, some issues have arisen that seem to indicate a need for an updated and revised traffic study. And I'd like whatever support the members of the County Plan Commission can give in this regard to Lisa Ridge and to Patrick Martin and to Penny Githens, who is a commissioner for transportation, because we really, the safety and health of our city really depends on this level of coordination. So that's my report to you. And if anybody else has anything to say about any of the other committees that you serve on, we can hear from you now, or we can have a motion for adjournment.
Commissioner Thomas has her hand raised.
Oh, Commissioner Thomas, yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm actually wondering if the folks who are on the executive committee will be willing to meet. We had some discussions about historic preservation issues and things like that, and I think it would be really useful for us to have a meeting. So I'm wondering if the members of the Plan Commission who are on the executive committee would be willing to have a meeting in the near future.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Ms. Nestor-Jelen, could you arrange that?
Are you thinking next week?
Next week, week after? Yeah,
Okay.
next couple weeks would be great. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks.
Mr. McKim?
Just in the interest of reporting on other committees and commissions, like I mentioned earlier, the county council did adopt the 2022 budget, and we adopted in particular the planning department's budget as presented.
Okay, thank you. And are there any other items that anyone would like to discuss? If not, we could have a motion and we could go on with our merry lives.
Move we adjourn.
Move for adjournment.
Okay.
Second.
Any objections, raise your hand. Otherwise, have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.